Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn how Uber and Mad Canada are reducing impaired driving at uber.com/home soon.
CHEK Podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Political Capital, your source for all the latest in BC politics. I'm your host, Rob Shaw, coming to you from the CHEK News World Headquarters in Victoria, subsidiary of our new Beijing Bureau. One of the many topics this week as we discuss the China-Canada trade deal, the end of BC's decriminalization pilot project, and the BC Conservative leadership race. To do so, we bring in our panel, Jillian Oliver, longtime BC Green strategist, Jeff Ferrier, an even longer time BC New Democrat strategist, and Angelo Isidorou, the comparable rookie on this panel, but a prolific strategist nonetheless, current executive director of the BC Conservative Party. And yes, Jeff, I did just call you old. I apologize for that. Seasoned is...
It fits. The label fits.
It fits. It is our 200th episode, I have been told. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, we have a very large celebration planned as part of this 3-hour special that I'm told has been reduced to 22 minutes. So we're just going to move on. But thank you for joining us on our journey these many years. Our first topic, probably we were talking about this on episode 1, BC and decriminalization. BC pulls the plug on decrim, the 3-year pilot project to allow people to possess small amounts of illicit drugs like heroin, meth, fentanyl, and cocaine comes to an end as Health Minister Josie Osborne announced this week the province won't ask Ottawa for an extension beyond January 31st. Here's the Health Minister.
Ultimately, we were not seeing results in the way of a huge increase in self-referrals to care, an increase in the use of certain kinds of services, and the public awareness and understanding that's necessary, creating all the conditions for success.
Okay, so decrim did not show the results BC had hoped for, according to Osborne. That is an early contender for understatement of the year. Angelo, let's start with you on that. What do you make of the winding down of decrim?
Well, decriminalization was always a mistake. You know, what really gets me about this is Osborne saying, yeah, it didn't work, but you know what? We're really proud. We're proud of what we've done. I'm sorry, but there's nothing to be proud of in decriminalization. It's an insane policy. It always was. It has led to more suffering and death than ever before. And instead of seeking pride in the issue, they should acknowledge the damage that it's done. So Osborne saying she's proud does not come off well. The issue at hand, though, is the fact that drugs were basically decriminalized beforehand in practice. So what exactly is the plan now? Yes, the culture is not promoting, this notion of decriminalization, but what is the NDP going to do about it other than maybe quietly hiring political allies and paying them a lot of money to do?
De facto decriminalization, I think, is what police called it beforehand. I guess we're back there. Jeff, what do you make of the winding down of decrim?
Well, I think the policy proved to be a political failure for the government. I want to separate two things here, street disorder and toxic drug deaths. I think on the street disorder, it was a clear failure. You saw increased street disorder. It became untenable. It became frustrating for British Columbians. And that's why they felt the need to not reapply with the federal government to continue this program. I will point on overdose deaths. There is a narrative out there that this has caused more deaths, more suffering. I went to the coroner's website this morning. They have a graphic about how many people have died of drug overdose deaths over time. Did you know that British Columbia has seen a steep decrease in the number of people who've died from overdose deaths? 32.3 per 100,000 people, rate compared to 46.8 in 2019. That's 1,000 fewer people who have died in 2025 compared to the same time in 2019. So street disorder, clear failure, government's right to step back from this, but let's not pretend that something's happening that is helping reduce the number of people who are dying. Still too many, but the trend line is down, not up.
I guess the problem is we don't know why it's down. Like no one from government or the coroner's office has ever been able to articulate why it kind of went up at the start of decrim and down, what policy. There's no data whatsoever, Jillian, on this project at all as it winds up. The health minister said she can't find any causal relationship between decrim doing one thing or another. Left government in kind of a tough spot winding this up, but what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was really the implementation details that made the policy a failure. Opposition critics from both the Conservatives and the Greens pressed the government to establish metrics for the pilot at the outset, and the government didn't do that. So, of course, it was going to be impossible to measure its success. And I think, you know, the point of decriminalization was to reduce barriers to people seeking treatment. The government also didn't include more follow through on really shoring up that treatment and those options for people. And I think that's, you know, why we've seen it fail in the eyes of the public, and why the government's was unable to you know, point to any successes coming out of the idea.
I think the Greens in their release said it was set up to fail by not having the wraparound supports and all the extra stuff, the extra treatment that was promised at the beginning. I want to go just around again and kind of take one step back, because London Drugs announced it's closing its downtown east side location in Vancouver due to crime, theft, street disorder, violence, shoplifting. And so with decrim over, and we sort of touched on this the first round, but Angelo, where does the public disorder file stand for government, for opposition, for the public at this point, even without decriminalization on the table?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not clear that it makes any difference to say that decrim has gone away. So London Drugs is closing its doors down in the Woodward area. You know, I just go back to some hypocrisy here, where 24 hours prior to the announcement, Terry Young is lauding, you know, a photo of him standing in front of London Drugs talking about how crime is going down. And then 24 hours later, the president of London Drugs is closing doors, announcing that they're closing doors because of crime and disorder and chaos. And I go back to the fact that EB was warned about this at least a few years ago by the same president, by this organization called Save Our Streets. So, you know, they claimed they had a plan there. They claimed they had a plan then. The issue is only getting worse. Mm-hmm. So it's not clear to me that there is a plan at all other than virtue signaling.
Jeff, decrim being off the table, does it change any of the political calculus on any of the larger issues?
I think the issue shifts from street disorder onto treatment of folks who are dealing with these drug challenges. I think Jillian's right to point out that the backstop of treatment, detox, the services not being there for people when they needed them. I think that's a fair critique. I think it's worth noting on decrim that it wasn't an ideological thing that the NDP did all on its own. It was encouraged by chiefs of police across British Columbia at the outset of this to give it a try, because nothing else was working. And as police chiefs have shifted, so has the government. I think the question now becomes who's actually going to be willing to invest in detox and treatment now that we're through this experiment on decriminalization? Is it going to be the government, which has been trying its best to cling to maintaining public services during a difficult economic time, or is it going to become cost-cutting critics who, at the one point, you know, virtue signal about the importance of treatment, but in the background have a plan to, and say it outright, that they want to reduce the deficit by cutting services that government provides?
Okay, Jillian, just close us off really quickly on this. Where do you think the larger issue goes here?
Well, I think, you know, EB has taken responsibility for the downtown east side and said that he's going to do something about that, and he needs to show progress. But I also, you know, I don't think that the London Drugs closure is quite the flashpoint that Conservatives are saying it is. This was opened in 2009. It was interesting to hear the statements from the CEO of London Drugs saying that at the time they bought into the vision to gentrify the downtown east side in Gastown, which was actually the BC Liberals proposition. And I think, you know, actually what's been proven is that just gentrifying and bringing businesses into an area isn't a solution to social problems. And, you know, I think Jeff's right. I think that if the Conservatives are going to try to continue to use these flashpoints for political gain, they need to be offering another plan other than just, cutting services and prioritizing business.
Okay, let's take our first break here. We're going to come back with a discussion of the BC Conservative leadership race right after these messages.
When I asked you what you need from our next leader, your answer was very clear. You need somebody who can build an exceptional team across this province, a team ready to govern, a team ready to earn the trust of the people of British Columbia, and a team that is ready to win the next provincial election.
Welcome back. That is Ian Black, a former BC Liberal cabinet minister under Gordon Campbell, announcing his bid this week to be the next leader of the BC Conservative Party. A busy week on that race. You have Kamloops Centre MLA Peter Milobar announcing, political pundit Caroline Elliott, both launching their campaigns. Businessman Yuri Fulmer is already in the race, as is MLA Sheldon Clare and Rossland contractor Warren Ham. Some others eyeing it, and also the ICBA president, Chris Gardner, stunning the field by announcing he's dropping out due to health reasons, proving at least, Jeff, one of your picks, you had Chris Gardner winning the race, is wrong. Just want to put that out there. You're already down in a deficit on your New Year's picks, but you don't get to say anything because we're going to go to Angelo first. So, Angelo, you are neutral in the race, obviously, with the Conservatives, but just tell us what the next steps are here as this race starts to take off for these candidates.
Well, the first thing I'll note is I goaded Jeff into making several predictions last week in order for at least one of them to be wrong, which of course means they're all wrong.
Probably all our predictions are wrong, but Jeff's just the leading edge of it, yes.
So the race has begun. I mean, we're going to be releasing our rules here shortly. In order to become the leader of the party, you're going to have to meet certain expectations around getting signatures from candidates or, members. Raising money, at least in tranches. There'll be an entry fee, getting approved and vetted by LEOC, and then participating in the race. The party is still a relatively small party in membership, so we expect the membership to go up quite a bit. And ultimately, we're running the race as if we're not just electing the next leader, but someone who can very realistically become the premier of the province. So it's for all the marbles. We're very excited to see, professional, well-respected people stepping up here. I know you guys want to go through the field, so I'm going to shut up and be neutral, but expect more information to come.
Yeah, those rules will be interesting to sort of get to the kind of hurdles that the candidates have to face. Jillian, based on the sort of suite that we're seeing so far, what do you make of the early stages of the Conservative leadership race?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think, this is the first time that the party's had a leadership race. Restad became leader without a contest. And so we're seeing a lot of different candidates bringing in a lot of different potential elements that they think will be successful for a leader. And I think in a lot of ways, it's shaping up to be a litmus test for conservatism in general in Canada. And that's why you see so much interest from strategists coming from outside of the province. Are they going to double down on culture war stuff? You see a candidate like Caroline Elliott, who's really made a name for herself, really focusing on not just a critique of the implications of DRIPA, but also sort of talking about parental controls over what kids are learning in schools and all of these sort of more culture war issues. We see sort of the more traditional business-friendly candidates like Yuri Fulmer and Ian Black that are kind of more from the old BC Liberal, BC Chamber of Commerce kind of vibes, with the suit and tie and from a maybe more wealthier subsect of the province and speaking to those groups. And then we see some more of the new kind of very populist working class types of candidates like Harman Bangu stepping in. So it's going to be really interesting to see how members respond, how the candidates themselves kind of highlight those differences and talk about them together. Oh, and I should also say Peter Milobar, who has been one of the most kind of principled critics, I think, on the Conservative side, really focusing on the substance of the issues on lots of different files, but especially on reconciliation and calling out other members of his parties when they've sort of, focused more on the culture war aspect of that issue. So it's going to be a really interesting dynamic race, and it's going to be just fascinating to watch, I think. Yeah,
it's a good rundown of the kind of spectrum of different candidates. Jeff, what do you think so far?
I will not look forward to candidates in the BC Conservatives tearing themselves apart as a party. I hope that doesn't happen. That notwithstanding, first thing, I do want to say that I wish the best to Chris Gardner as he's dealing with this health issues, And same goes for Jim Rutkowski, the chief of staff to the premier, who's had to step away for health issues as well. I know we all send our best wishes to both of those folks. On this leadership campaign, I find it interesting about, and I think Jillian's right about the litmus test for conservatism. It's going to be an internal struggle of right versus liberal, sensible versus more extreme, rural versus urban. We'll see how the rules play out, whether it's a one member, one vote, or it's a weighted by riding, and that would have a big impact on the outcome. I also want to note that it's Caroline Elliott bringing in the Toronto Maple Leafs of politics to run her campaign is an interesting call, but there are some impressive people there, and it puts her in a spot where she's seen as a front runner right out of the gate. On the culture wars part, I've been really troubled by the candidates and how they've been leaning into First Nations as a political wedge, targeting 5% of the population of British Columbia as the cause of the problems we're facing with our economy, suggesting that it's political and ideological when all folks know, and certainly folks with PhDs in political science know, that it's a constitutional issue, that it's about Section 35.1 of the Constitution, that First Nations have Aboriginal rights, whether it's in treaty or otherwise, that gives them the right to assert rules over their traditional territories where there are no treaties in place. So, I mean, I'll be watching that carefully, how much we see dog whistles on First Nations as part of this leadership race, and it doesn't look good at the outset.
I'm not sure, and well, we're out of time on this topic, but it'll be interesting. I'm not sure if the Conservatives are dog whistling on that issue, or they're picking up the public sentiment of fear that exists on some of the topics we've talked about on private property rights and different court rulings. So that is a topic for another day. We're just going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we want to take a look at the Prime Minister in Prince Rupert and China, the implications for British Columbia on that, coming up after this.
We believe that the spirit and the substance of these discussions and these agreements will provide great benefit to each of our peoples, but also provide an example to the world of cooperation amidst a time globally of division and disorder.
That is Prime Minister Mark Carney speaking in Beijing this week, announcing a trade deal with the Chinese government that will see Canada cut its 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles down for the first 49,000 vehicles in return for China lessening its tariffs on Canadian agriculture and seafood products. What does it mean for BC? We'll back to the panel on that. Jillian, what Carney is saying that China is kind of more of a stable trading partner in a way than the United States here. It's a sort of an interesting comment. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that would have been really shocking, a year or two ago, but kind of, I think, given everything that's happening down south, probably rings true for a lot of people. I think, the big focus of the deal is canola, which is mostly grown in the prairies, and EVs, which will be importing. BC is actually already ahead on its EV sales targets, but that helps with cost of living if we have access to more affordable clean technology, because those are in high demand. There are other MOUs coming out that are not part of the main trade deal, including one on lumber to boost research, development, and promotion of modern wood construction in China. There's a lot of building construction happening there. That is something that could really help the BC forestry industry. We've talked a lot about that and how the softwood lumber tariffs are one that we're like least likely to see relief on in the US. So that's good. There's also deals on seafood and agriculture, which help BC to maybe a bit of a lesser extent than softwood. But BC is also the closest port to China. A lot of this trade is going to be coming through our ports, and that's good news for them. And I think this is also in alignment with where the premier is going in terms of talking about diversifying trade. He's in India right now, also announcing these types of deals. So I think it's more kind of alignment on the economic strategy front for the Premier and the Prime Minister.
Yeah. Jeff, what's the chance here that this ticks off the U.S. president and he just drop kicks us on softwood lumber even harder and the whiplash hits British Columbia?
Yeah, I don't know how much more we could tick off the President of the United States. He seems to be dead set against Canada and our economy. The most recent musing that he had was that the Canada, U.S., Mexico trade deal was completely irrelevant. He's threatening tariffs on people who don't support his plan to take over Greenland. Canada needs more reliable trade partners. There are no perfect options out there. China is the second largest economy in the world. It makes practical sense if we can't bargain with the Americans to try and bargain with China. And Jillian's right about who this benefits in British Columbia. It's shippers. We can't get crude oil to the coast, but we can get canola oil to the coast.
Easier
and
to clean up in
foreign
the spill.
markets. It's true, and it's important for making delicious French fries.
That's right. Okay. Angelo, 1 minute to you to close us out on this. Do you think there's any impact to British Columbia, good or bad, retribution or not here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm looking at this a little differently from the economy. Before the federal election, Carney said that China was the greatest security threat to Canada. In his press conference the other day, he said that he's partnering with China to combat narcotics, cybercrime, and money laundering. But those are all issues that the RCMP and FinTrack have associated with Chinese actors. So it just feels a little bit bizarre to me. And it affects BC. BC has dealt with the brunt of these issues. So I'm not sure that British Columbia is more secure from these issues by having our Prime Minister partner with foreign actors who may be responsible for them.
Yeah, yes, right. Partnering with China to address the things China is doing to us, conceivably. But there was a line, I saw the New York Times reporting Mark Carney saying that, to explain this, we take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be, I guess explaining his larger view of international relations at this point. All right, panel, thank you for walking us through everything, and to you, thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our audio podcast where you have some extras we talk about each and every week, and we will be back next week with all the latest in BC politics here on Political Capital. Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn how Uber and Mad Canada are reducing impaired driving at uber.com/homesoon.